GT the Vibe Podcast coming to another episode. I appreciate you guys rocking with me for so long. Please make sure you like, subscribe, and share. Say hello to Luck. He decided to walk by the camera just to let y'all know he's here. Uh, it's another episode of Church Cult Wednesdays. This one's going to be a couple different episodes that I'm going to pull because there's a lot to go to this one. The Waco Massacre, Davidian, church group with David Koresh as their leader. So essentially, let me kind of give you guys a brief overview, and then we'll talk about, we'll kind of break this down into some sections. So, Church Waco, Texas, essentially, David Koresh is believed, he believes that he is the second coming of the Messiah. He believes that he is the second coming of Jesus Christ. His believers worship him. They believe that same motto that he is the second coming of Jesus Christ. Dangerous, extremely dangerous. And I say this because religion is one of those things where, and you guys will see it as we as we do Church Cult Wednesdays, as we kind of go through some of these organizations that just been radical as heck, and some of the things that they believe, some of the things that they do, you're just like, man, this is shocking to me. There's obviously some issues with believing that this person is the second coming of Jesus Christ. Like for me personally, if somebody came and said that they're the second coming of Jesus Christ, I'll be like, all right, well, let's go ahead and crucify him and then see if he comes back to life. He's probably not coming back to life because there's no second coming of Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ is not going to come as a man. He's going to come as himself. He's not going to come in the flesh again. He already came in the flesh one time as a one-time deal. So if anybody tells you that they're the second coming of Jesus Christ and they're in the flesh, have some discernment, guys. Like let's be smart about this. But their church is in Waco, Texas. David Koresh is a very charismatic guy, and a lot of times the people that get in these roles and they have these organizations, they're charismatic, man. They're like salesmen essentially. They can sell raid to a bug or salt to a slug. That was in a rap song back in the day, by the way. But that's what they do. They are salesmen. And so he believed that he was not a prophet, the second coming of Jesus Christ. So this dude thought he was Jesus. Like you might as well just call him the Messiah because that's what he thought he was. And his believers believed that he was the Messiah, which is what led them to do the things that they did. And we're going to talk through some of the stuff that they did in his church. And then when the ATF got involved and there was mass bloodshed on a specific day in 1993. It was in March, I believe, 1993. And so let's talk about some of the things that they did, and then we'll kind of dive into some of the semantics of his church group, his church cult. Um, as a man, it's crazy because he did not allow the men to have sex with their wives, right? He could have sex with their wives, but and like the women like craved his attention. They wanted him to pick them. Like it was like, please pick me. Like these women have husbands, and it was like, please, man, let the leader pick me. Here's the thing. Let me talk to y'all about that. Here's the thing. This happens subtly in Christian churches today. This is a subtle happening in your churches today. Here's why it happens. Let me explain to you why this can happen. There's two huge factors that branch into why this can happen. Number one, too many feminine men, too many soft men, like real masculine dudes. We not gonna let this crap happen. Like this is the type of stuff that the type of stuff that these dudes were agreeing to in this church cult ain't gonna happen with a real dude. Like you're not gonna catch no real dude. Like hey, you just sleep with my woman and I can't sleep with her. First of all, we gonna have to box. Like that's number one. We boxing over that. Like if that's what you telling me we got to do, we out of this motherfucker. Excuse my French. Feminine man. Oh, I'm trying to okay, I'll let her do. That's when I think feminine men, soft dudes. And the problem is that the conglomerate of men that are in churches today are feminine dudes, right? So this is the type of stuff that happens. Like I remember I was watching a sermon where a pastor was saying, "Don't take me home with you." The problem is it's hard for women to not take you home with it because women love people in power, right? So if you're in power, they see you on this pedestal, and women will pedestalize their pastor. So their pastor's word will mean more than their actual man's word. So seeing this happen in these cults, and this is a common theme across a lot of these cults. This is what's happening. The men, they're married to this woman, but this woman is actually really belongs to the pastor, the leader of the church. Don't even call him a pastor, a leader of the church. That's what we're gonna call him, because I don't want to degrade other pastors. So David Koresh understood the femininity of the men that he had to bring in. He ain't stupid. He might have been the only for real macho masculine man in the church. He might have been the only one, right? Which would make him attractive. Because think about it, women, nature, right? If they're around a whole bunch of feminine dudes that are like them, and then you go into this church and you see this masculine dudes, you're like, oh, like ding, because that's what women are attracted to, actually. And so you get these feminine dudes. They're just letting this dude do whatever he wants to, essentially. And you think about it, feminine men don't protect kids. So what do you think David Koresh was doing to the kids? There's rumors of him doing stuff with the kids too, sex stuff, sexual stuff, which is disgusting. There's a disgusting human being, and so you got to think about that. Like, if there's no masculine men in the church, there's no protection, right? Because masculine men, we protect. That is like an instinct that I have that is second nature to me, to protect my people at all costs, no matter what it takes. That's a second nature thing. It's just like, man, I know I have to protect my people, so that's what I do. And so, in March of 1993, um, so the ATF had been staking out. There's a house that was near their compound. Their compound is huge, huge. I read somewhere it's like 77 acres. Yeah, huge compound. So there's a house, and the ATF were staking out there. Uh, they've been tipped off that they had machine guns there, illegal weapons that they weren't supposed to have. And so the ATF is watching, and they're ready to make a move. So on that day, um, the ATF decided that a couple things from a law enforcement background standpoint. I feel like you got to have a plan. I feel like the plan that they had was not a good plan. A lot of bloodshed because they went in there willy nilly. You can't do a warrant willy nilly. So you got your warrant, but you got to have a plan behind your warrant. So essentially, what happened was uh, they ended up breaching the compound, not getting inside the compound, but breaching onto the land of the compound. They had two trucks. They rolled up. Some say it was like 40 to 50 ATF agents. I mean, full blacked out, vest on, everything. Um, that basically went up and took position near the compound. And this is all happening in the front of the compound, essentially. There are cars and things like that, and they've got their two big trucks that they roll up in. So they decide to breach. Um, so the crazy thing is, they say David came to the door and he wanted to talk. Hey, we want to talk to you. But I think what happened is when you're full metal jacket on a warrant, a lot of times, these federal agencies, they don't interact with civilians as much as the local law enforcement does. So like me, I would have plenty of interactions with people. Our SWAT team in Wichita, a lot of those guys work a lot of them work on the streets and like detecting and things like this. They have interactions with people, right? So they understand, okay, there's a way to go about getting to the goal without a whole bunch of bloodshed. And that's always been our goal. As law enforcement, that's always been our goal. We don't want to have that whole bunch of people die, right? And we knew that these people were preparing for the apocalypse, right? So law enforcement knew, ATF knew that Koresh and his church were preparing for the apocalypse, like the end of the world. He wanted to rewrite Revelations. That was his goal. I want to rewrite Revelations. Their kids were taught how to shoot, reload guns. They were stockpile guns. Think zombie apocalypse. That's what they had. They were stockpiling machine guns. Um, so they're ready. It's a tactical nightmare because there's nothing but open around this compound. So you got this big compound and nothing but acres of open land around it. Like there's no real opportunity for any kind of shelter. And even if they had military grade vehicles, it was it was tipped off that they had weapons that could pierce. They had armor piercing rounds, so they could shoot through a lot of the vehicles that they could pull up there. So it's a tactical nightmare. Like, this is a death trap essentially. They've got all the protection through their bricks on their compound than the ATF did coming in. And so the ATF comes in. Koresh opens the door. He was tipped off, so he knew they were coming. So military helicopters kind of got in the area. He opens the door and he's like, he essentially says he wants to talk, right? And police give him commands, ATF give him commands, come out, yada yada yada. Slams the door. Next thing you know, shots just popping off. Some described it as a war zone. Sound like a war zone out there. I mean, So they said it was one of the most crazy gunfights on American soil since the Civil War. And this is a church group. Like these people were preparing for this for a long time. And I think the ATF kind of shot their shot a little bit crazy because if you know they got machine guns, if you know they have um, armor piercing rounds and guns that can shoot armor piercing rounds, like you know these people have been preparing for this for a long time. You can't just prepare for this in 4 or 5, 6 days, a couple weeks, and think that you're going to be able to go in there and actually get the outcome that you want to get. And so it ends up being a massive shootout on day one. Massive shootout on day one. 4 ATF agents were killed in a gun battle. There were some of the churchgoers that were killed too. Koresh ended up getting shot in his side and I believe his hand. It was a through and through on his side, so it came out the other side. But he was in bad shape. So obviously, massive gunfight, and now the ATF is at a position where it's like, okay, now we got to back out. We got dead people. We got dead bodies. We got people that have been shot, um, and you also have people that are injured. You have ATF agents that are injured. So it's like we got to figure out a way to get out of here. There's no protection behind these vehicles because they got armor piercing rounds and they've got towers. Like if you think about prisons when they have the towers, they have towers. So they got people shooting armor piercing rounds from towers at people. And so the ATF is in over their head now. Like they know we're in over our head. We got to figure out how to get out of there. So they were able to get in contact with David Koresh um, and negotiate a ceasefire. Like, hey, we'll stop shooting. You guys stop shooting. We got to get our guys out of here, right? And so they ended up agreeing to a ceasefire. And so they were able to get ATF agents out there. They had all the ambulances for the county sitting out there ready. And they're just hauling people off. They had a couple of news reporters that had their cameras on them, and they were just trying to get the story. Um, but I believe that it was a tactical nightmare. I believe that ATF put themselves at a disadvantage. Preparation, you got to be preparing more. But now that you have dead federal agents, now the FBI's got to get involved. So the FBI gets called in. They got to bring their negotiators. So they can obviously try to negotiate a truce, get some peace, less because a lot of times when you bring in negotiators, your goal is to have less bloodshed. That's the goal. So their goal was to have less bloodshed. So they brought in FBI negotiators. They brought in their hostage negotiation team. These are the people that go in and get hostages. Essentially, they're the most elite, badass people from the FBI. So they bring them into, and obviously these guys are gonna have a different mindset than negotiators. But we'll talk about that in the next episode. I just want to kind of get you guys that brief. We're gonna probably spend a couple weeks on this because there's so much, man. Waco was one of the. I remember the news just like it was on the news, man. I remember like seeing smoke coming from the compound, uh, just craziness, and wondering like how do you get people to do this? And some of the people that were part of the church cult were like, man, we believe that we had to the only way for us out was suicide. So there's people ready to give their lives for what they believed in. And it just shows you how powerful religion is, and if it gets into the wrong hands, the type of damage that it can do. I mean, it can do a lot of damage. So you got to be careful. Um, but this episode one, Waco of the Waco massacre for Church Cult Wednesdays. I'll see you guys on the next one. GTV Vibe Podcast. Please like, subscribe, and share. Hit the bell so you can get a notification whenever we pop off again. We'll see you on the next one.